Great.
Okay, let me just get the recording ready, and then I will start with the first item. So. Okay, welcome to the Swansea Bay City Region Joint Committee. First item on the agenda is election of Swansea of the Joint Committee Chair. Any nominations, please? Councillor Price.
Can I nominate Councillor Robert Stewart, please? Rob Stewart, thank you.
Okay, any other nominations? No, can I have a second for Councillor Stewart?
Yeah, happy to second.
All those in favour? There you are, that's unanimous. So that's Councillor Stewart will be in the chair. Obviously, he's given his apologies for today's meeting. So the next item for me will be to elect a chair pro tem. Can I have nominations, please?
Councillor Darren Price.
Any other nominations? Okay, all those in favour of Councillor Price to be the chair pro tem? And again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Over to you, Councillor Price.
Thank you very much. We'll move on then to item 2 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. Hugh, would you want to list these, or I'm happy to do that?
Quite happy. I've got quite a few here. I'll go through them quickly. Councillor Rob Stewart, Councillor Steve Hunt, Councillor David Simpson, Maria Battle, Professor Medwyn Hughes, Tracy Meredith. That's all I have. I'm sure there may be others.
There we are. And I'm mindful that currently there's no representation from Swansea University following Steve Wilkes' departure next. So that paper will come to us in due course. So with that then, if we're happy to accept those apologies, we'll move on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations that need to be made at this point? Nope. There we are. Great. We move on to item 4, which is the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 28th of July. Is anybody happy to propose them as a correct record?
Happy to move.
Thank you, David. And could we all show by raising our hands if we're happy to accept them, please? Great, check them out. Thank you very much. I'm just on a message. There's apologies from Will Bramble as well in Pembrokeshire, so that needs to be added to the list. Hugh. Item 6 then is public questions. There are none, so we can move forward to item 7 on the agenda, which is the internal audit terms of reference. I'm hoping that we can take items 7 and 8 together in one block, if that's acceptable to members. So item 7 is the internal audit terms of reference, and item 8 is the internal audit charter. And we have Matthew Holder here to present on both items. So Matthew, over to you, George.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The internal audit terms of reference for 22-23 sets out the arrangements of the work that we will undertake as the regional internal audit team for Swansea Bay City Deal. It's an annual audit that we carry out and report back on. The report sets out the key objectives, scopes, approach and reporting arrangements as well that we will adhere to. Hopefully, once we receive approval from the Joint Committee, we will begin our field work between January and March 2023. It's come to the committee sooner because we need to get this in transit at the moment. Once we conclude the internal audit field work, we will issue a report to the respective officers for their consideration and any comments that need to be added to any recommendations made. Once we receive that feedback, Chair, we will originally present to the programme board for their initial consideration before we will submit it for approval by Joint Committee. We're aiming to be in June 2023. If I take the internal audit charter as well, Chair. So the internal audit charter defines the purpose, role and scope of internal audit, along with the authority to access information and personnel. The charter has been written in accordance with the public sector internal audit standards, and I'm bringing it back to the Joint Committee as there have been some changes, both in personnel since the last one had been approved a few years ago. Internal audit is there to help an organisation accomplish its objectives by bringing a systematic, disciplined approach to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of key areas to the region. And a professional, independent and objective internal audit service is one of the key elements of good governance, and the Charter highlights that and reinforces that. The expectations of my role as the head of internal audit for the region are also included and clearly documented within the Charter. Along with my role, the expectations of how my team will approach their work in terms of their due professional care, integrity, independence and impartiality is also written into the Charter, as long as the reporting and quality assurance processes as well. If there are any changes to the internal audit Charter, Chair, I will bring these back to the Joint Committee should any revisions be required. I'm happy to take any questions on both, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members on these two reports, or any comments that want to be made? Chris Moore, do you want to come in on this point?
Thank you, Chair. Just to reassure the committee that the work programme and the terms of reference have all been agreed prior to coming here with myself as Section 151 and the project director. So we're totally in support of what they're proposing to do this year.
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Chris. Are there any comments from members? Are we quite content? No, if we're content, then I'll ask formally that we approve the recommendations as set out in items 7 and 8 by raising your hands, if possible. Right. Anybody against? No. There we are. If our recommendations have been approved. Thank you very much, Matthew. We move on then to item 9 on the agenda, which is the update in terms of the homes as power stations. Clearly, this is a chance for us to be updated as a joint committee in terms of the progress that's been made and the status of the project. Nicola, please, I understand you're going to open up on this item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a regional project which Neath Talbot Council are leading on. It's a very complex project and we're at the very early stages in terms of its development. The project manager is here with us today, so Una Gavigan, and she can take you through the activities that have been taking place recently and our next step. So if I hand over to Una.
Thank you, Nicola. I suppose Nicola's just covered the first bit, the introduction. So as far as staffing for the project, the business case states that there would be 3 members of staff, and a lot of the work, the foundation work, is primarily around stakeholder engagement. There is a lot going on across not just the region, but across Wales, the UK and the wider world, and there's a lot of interest with renewables and obviously fuel poverty and other issues that are going on in the world at the moment. So we were thankful to be able to secure Richard Lewis, who has been appointed as the technical coordinator. Richard brings a wealth of experience in both housing and a science background. So he's been in post for all of 3 weeks and is hitting the road running, shall we say. So the other post that was on the business case, the 3rd member of staff, was the supply chain lead. Unfortunately, we haven't been successful in appointing somebody suitable for this post. So we've discussed at project board the various options, and we will be going down the consultancy route to start the first phase of work, with a view to looking at other options of recruiting. We think it's important to have a member of staff within the team, purely because of the other work, and it will be important that they're part and parcel of the team, as in some of the work that goes on across the local authorities and how that ties up together. The legal aspects of the project, so there's 3 legal documents that are underpinning the project. The primary agreement has been finalised. The inter-authority agreement is at the final stages and is sitting with the legal teams, and then the third bit will be the third-party agreement. So we're confident that the legal agreements and what is necessary has been covered. As far as the funding associated with the project, the Regional Financial Incentives Fund, so this is our £5.75 million pot of money. A prior notification will be going out. There's been a lot of discussion around how other funding has been delivered, and I think it's important that we listen to the experts that have been part and parcel of delivering these funding, and take on board how we can do things in a progressive manner. So taking those views on board, we will be putting a prior notification to give applicants the opportunity of planning. The next part on the paper that's mentioned is the Optimise Retrofit Programme. The change with the Optimise Retrofit Programme, which is the pot of money that's given out from Welsh Government annually, is that it has been changed into a 3-year allocation. Now, this is really good news for the HAPS project, because this gives us far more time to plan and ensure that we are maximising the various pots of money that are available. The other opportunity is the Eco4Flex funding, and looking at how this, again, is an opportunity, how HAPS could add value to this stream of funding and really support people who are experiencing fuel poverty and the most vulnerable people in our communities. So there was a group of various stakeholders came together on the 5th of October, and the aim of the group really was to finalise the scoping and the application criteria. So we will be presenting that at Project Board, which is the next Project Board, is on the 17th of this month. The Regional Supply Chain Fund, so this is our £7 million pot of money. This will be looking at getting a regional supply chain of one of the technologies, or one or more of the technologies that we know will is proven to work. So this is there's a link here with the monitoring and evaluation work. That's the next bit that I'll cover. But the supply chain, what is important on this is that we are supporting businesses to diversify and grow. So again, this isn't a standalone activity. We need to be working with the network of business support and other funding streams that are available within the region to maximise opportunities and actually make a difference to businesses that are out there. Again, there's a real link with the skills agenda. So it's tying all of these sort of strands together and some of the discussions that are ongoing at the moment. So the procurement of the monitoring and evaluation contract, so that's a £1 million contract over the 5-year period. The specification and the approach that we took was circulated to Project Board, and the housing departments and staff had input into what the specification looked like. So that was published, and we're now at the scoring stage. So we will be appointing the successful contractor by the 6th of December. The next part, the skills. There's a really this is a really important part of the project, and I think the last paragraph in the sort of skills write-up, where several funding options are available, and it's ensuring that work with the skills and talent programme, and again how we engage with businesses, and that's using our network of business teams across the region to ensure that the businesses that are already out there upskill so that we do have a workforce that are able to install and maintain the technologies associated with the project. The next part of the update is the power review. So the power review took place between the 11th and the 13th of July. Nicola may want to add some more information to this. The paper was attached to your documents. The power review team are back in tomorrow to look at our action plan, and we feel confident that plan and the activities that are taking place will be taking the project forward in the right direction, with taking into consideration the other implications that need to be considered as part of the project planning. I think that sort of covers all of the information that has been included in the paper. Whether Nicola wanted to add anything more as far as the power review.
If I may, Chair. Thank you. As Una indicated, in July of this year, we had a project assessment review of the HAPS programme, and there were 6 recommendations coming out of that. Now we have a further review tomorrow with the team, and we will be updating the team on the action plan that we are in the process of implementing. We are confident that 2 of the actions are complete, and the other 4 are very much mature in terms of completion. And we are confident that as a consequence of the review tomorrow, that the delivery confidence rating will improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Have members got any comments or questions at this point? Clearly, the project is an important one for the city deal as a whole, isn't it? It's significant in terms of its funding levels, in terms of the investment when you look at the city deal as a whole, and it's important in terms of job creation as well as obviously the environmental benefits that you referred to there in the presentation. Clearly, there was reference in the report around the difficulties that you've encountered, really, in pointing to some key posts. I know, Una, you mentioned that in terms of the supply chain lead, for example, and the fact that we're looking at utilising consultants then in the short term to try and progress matters. That's integral, really, isn't it? The supply chain and the manufacture, the installation and the maintenance of the new technologies is what's going to make a big difference on this project. So I'm mindful that you mentioned the meeting which takes place tomorrow. So clearly, from our perspective as members, I'm sure I'd speak on behalf of others in saying that in terms of that reporting of that assurance and the outcomes of those discussions, we'd be grateful to see at the earliest opportunity, really, the results of that next phase of discussions then. So I just wonder, Nicola, would you be best placed just to advise maybe in terms of how we deliver that over the coming months?
No problem, Chair. We've got, as indicated, we have that all-day session with the review team tomorrow, and normally what happens is we get verbal feedback at the end of the day together with a draft report that we can comment on, and we have a period of a week then to finalise that report. And given that the next joint committee isn't until February, and this is an important project for the region, what I would suggest is that after the review meeting tomorrow, and following receipt of the final report, we will circulate that report to members of the programme board and of joint committee, which will include the confidence assessment, and we will also update our action plan and forward that to you also, so you're fully appraised of the progress regarding this project.
That sounds great. Thanks very much, Nicola, for that. Are there any further comments or questions from members, or are we happy to accept? Obviously, Nicola's mentioned there the way forward over the next few months now. So if members are happy with that, then I'll ask you just to raise your hand to accept that and to accept the report formally. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nicola, and thank you, Una, as well for the information on the presentation. We'll move forward now then to item 10, which is the quarterly financial monitoring, and I understand that Richard Arnold will present this report. So, Richard, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is the Q2 financial monitoring. The key details to take from the financial monitoring, particularly around the Joint Committee operational budget, is that we are forecasting for a 963,000 spend, and this will be offset against income of 879,000, resulting in a small year-end deficit of about 84,000. The deficit is being created because the income is attached to the 1.5% top slice, or part of the income is. So it's just a timing effect with the release of the grant going out. We're not concerned about the deficit because we brought forward a reserve of 220,000, and we will offset the 84 against the reserve, and that will still remain a small reserve of about 136,000 at year end. Moving on to the portfolio investment fund. So the three key areas of this is the investment, the annual monitoring, and the revenue requirement. So the investment over the life cycle of the Swansea-based city deal, we forecasted at about 1.248 billion. You will note that this is higher than Q1 because we're in construction on one project, and we've had tender forecasting in on another project. So that's pushed the investment up by about 9 million on the last quarter. The current annual position is demonstrating spend of about 80 million. Unfortunately, it's demonstrated slight slippage within the year against the accepted revised budget. However, it is worth noting that this slippage will be accelerated over the next 18 months to 2 years as projects mature and are delivered. So it's simply a timing effect within the portfolio. The revenue requirement, the revenue requirement is pretty static. There's still about a 63 million pound requirement from revenue. This is quite small. It's about 5%, to be honest, of the full portfolio. So there's no real concerns around it. And this will be actively managed through the local authorities and partners themselves. So I'm happy to take any questions on any details of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from members? No, content, quite explanatory. As I say, Richard, obviously there's a bit of slippage, but obviously that will be made up over the next year and a half as things warm up and as projects develop further, isn't it? You know, so yeah, I think we all accept that is the nature of capital schemes, you know. So yeah, so if members are happy, then I will ask you to approve the recommendation formally then under item 10 by raising your hands, please. Thank you very much. So that's approved. And we can move on then to item 11, which is the quarterly monitoring report. There's a range of dashboards and reports here, so I'll ask John Burns to run through those quickly if possible. John, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So this is an information starting on page 47. There's a whole host of documents, as the Chair said, but starting on page 50, I'm going to run through the key aspects, if you like, on the dashboard, starting with what we call the RAG status. So that's red, amber, green status. Pembroke Marine finance has lowered from red to amber, which is great news. Holmes's power stations, as Una and Nick referred to earlier on, the resources have increased from amber to red while they go through the recruitment process. And then the only other movement was waterfront finance has increased to red, whilst University of Wales Trinity St David identify their course of action for plugging the funding gap for the matrix due to the construction costs and inflationary pressures on that project. So those are the movements for the RAG status. In terms of delivery timeline, everything remains on track overall for delivery, so that's great news for us. We've seen a bit of slippage, as Rich Arnold has highlighted in the financial quarterly monitoring, but we're working closely with the projects and programmes to identify what the slippage is, the rationales, mitigations and any consequences, particularly around delivery or the impact of our portfolio. So we're on track, we're moving in the right direction, so that's good news. In terms of our risk register, we have 6 red risks currently on the risk register, 5 previous quarter. 1 new red risk has been identified, and that's in-year underspend to reflect the slippage. So again, as I said, we're working with the projects on that. The other red risks are realising the private sector funding contributions. Even though a lot of those aren't coming into future years, we're still making sure that we put mitigations, control actions and updates associated with that. Cost of construction is a further one, TAN 15 in terms of the NRW flood risk management keys and mapping, project slippage, and delivery of outputs and outcomes. So all of those have mitigations in place. They're all being managed and effectively monitored and reported through our governance processes. In terms of our issues log, we now have added a RAG status to our issues just to make sure we reflect the severity of our issues. We currently have 3 red issues. One is around making sure that we have our governance board documentation approved in a timely manner. So we're working on that. Measuring gross value added, which is one of our investment objectives at a project and programme level, and that's currently with the UK government for feedback. And it's the third one is around delays to funding agreements. So these are our control mechanisms to cascade funds and to allocate risk. So we're at the later stages of that, but there's a last couple of projects that we need to get over the line where funding agreements are developed and approved so that projects can move into delivery. All of those are being monitored. They've been escalated. Resolutions or part resolutions are in place for all of those issues. And again, we'll continue to report and monitor those. On to the benefits realisation. So this is what do we deliver? Total investment across the portfolio is at 15% of the total value that Rich highlighted earlier. We have realised to date 5% of jobs. Jobs have increased around 18 since the last quarter across the portfolio, and it's probably a contextual thing for board members to you probably appreciate it, but it's probably worth noting that there's a bit of context needed on the benefits realisation, and what we're going to do is make sure that we, in future reports, we profile our figures against actual deliverables, and the reason for that is that there's often a lag in terms of reporting. In many cases, a lot of our headline indicators that we have, like GVA, jobs created, inward investment, a lot of those are profiled towards the later years of our portfolio, which does run up to 2033. But there is somewhat of a perception that we should be delivering those straight off the bat as soon as the project starts up. Well, it kind of doesn't work in that way. And it's probably worth highlighting Homes as Power Stations because Nick and Una are here today talking about that. HAPs have actually superseded their jobs created. There was a target of 5 to date. They've got 6, but the 1,800 or so jobs created, they won't be realised until the bulk of the funding has been allocated. So the 10 million or so funding has been allocated, and then that commencement will happen in 2023, and it will extend up to 27, 28. So we wouldn't expect to see that bulk of jobs created until a lot of that activity has happened. And those milestones and those targets are set out in the project plans for all projects and programmes, including the HATCH project plan. So that's more of a context just for the benefit of the members and anybody listening in. In terms of change management, so these are anything that we change according to plan. We've had 2 change requests in since last quarter. One is a retrospective one around waterfront, and that was confirmation of completion dates for the arena and the Kingsway. And then the second one was around Pembroke Dock Marine with the Pembroke Dock infrastructure, and that related to land being acquired for a little bit longer to make sure that it's released for PDM purposes. So those are the 2 change requests we've had in. There's lots of change requests which are going through, or change notifications going through the pipeline, and we should see a bit of a flurry of those coming up in the next few quarters. Assurance and audit, as Matthew Holder said earlier on, we have an annual audit of the city deal. We have 1 outstanding recommendation with Howell Dar on the partner contributions for the final payment this financial year. So that should be resolved fairly soon. And Ian Williams is on the call. He will cover our portfolio gateway review in detail with the action plan associated with that and recommendations. So I'll leave that to Ian later. Communications, there was only a couple of elements left, Chair. Communications and engagement, we have now incorporated into the dashboard LinkedIn statistics. So those are now in there. And then the last 2 are around the same sort of thing, procurement pipeline. The city deal across the portfolio is over 35 procurements. From last quarter, there's minimal change, but to give a kind of feel for where we are, we have 3 projects completed, valued at around 120 million. 11 of them are in delivery. That's around £260 million of contracts in place, and 5 or more are planned for this financial year, which again would equate to around 220 million. So lots of high value procurements happening. What we're getting feedback from the sector and from the projects is that sometimes it's taking longer because of the inflationary pressures and the volatile market. So some of the procurements are taking longer than planned, but they are still progressing. And to coincide with that, the construction impact assessment, which is a document that you all have, we now have 4 returns from the 9 projects and programs around construction inflationary pressures. We have them for Pentra Owl campuses, Waterfront and Pembroke Marine. The areas of concern that the projects are raising are around scope, timescales and costs, so there's no surprises on that. But what we're doing with the projects is closely monitoring those with the programme and project leads, and we're also looking at identifying what those funding gaps are, the mitigations associated with them, and then reporting those through programme board and joint committee as and when that's appropriate. Because we can't second guess a procurement in a year's time as to how much that funding gap could be. So there is a timing issue to try and report across the portfolio. And Chair, I've covered all the key points. There's a lot more information in the packs that supports hopefully what I've just summarised.
Thanks, thanks, John. Thanks very much. Are there any queries, any questions, any comments from anybody or members? Clearly, one of the pressures we're all facing as a public sector is the inflationary costs. John, it's referenced there. Obviously, there's the impact assessment at the bottom of that report. Could you just maybe elaborate in terms of what discussions are taking place, with partners and particularly with UK and Welsh government around, that potential gap and how we address it?
Of course. So there's lots of dialogue with the project teams and the senior responsible owners for each of the projects and programs. We have an indication as to where the funding gap is, but what we need to do is go back and confirm those with the projects. And once we've done that, and we've identified the portfolio funding gap at a point in time, and I have to stress that, we can then open dialogue formally with the both Welsh and UK government. So we're hoping that a paper will come back to programme board this month, and then we can go and have dialogue with the Welsh and UK government as to how and what we can do to mitigate beyond the regional mitigations that we're putting in place for that. But until we get the paper back, Chair, we don't know exactly what that gap is and what the mitigations are that people have already identified. So it's a work in progress, but we are actively monitoring it.
Great, thanks very much. Are there any further questions? No, if not, then I will move to ask you to formally note the information by raising your hands if possible. Great, Jeff, thank you very much. And thank you, Jonathan, for that. I did forget to say, didn't I? Yes, under the financial monitoring, I do apologise. I've slipped up here. I'm aware that Richard actually is moving on to pastures new. He's leaving Carmarthenshire County Council to go and work elsewhere. So it was time really that I thank him for his work, really, that he's and the contribution he's made over the past few years in supporting the city deal, and to wish him well in his new role. So apologies, Richard, for missing that out at the end of the last item. But thank you very much for your work. It's much appreciated, and I know that you'll be missed by many around the screen today. So diolch yn fawr i ti a pob lwc. And with that, we'll move forward to the next item, which is item 12 on the agenda, which is the business case development process, and we have Ian Williams here to present. So Ian, over to you. Is Ian still on the call?
Can you hear me, Chair?
Oh, we can hear you. Yes.
Oh, sorry, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what happened there. I was just saying the guidance note has been circulated to clarify the requirements and process to be followed in the updating of business cases. The committee will be aware that there's 9 headline business cases for each of the projects and programmes of the city deal. They're key tools, not only in securing funding, but also in managing the project throughout its life cycle as well. As such, it's important that the business cases demonstrate that they remain current and viable and deliverable during the course of the whole project cycle. Business case updates are required when there are significant changes to a project, when there's key milestones achieved, for example, procurement, and or in preparation for assurance gateway reviews. The responsibility for updating business cases rests with the SRO and their teams. The proposed approach has been developed in consultation with SROs and project leads and agreed in principle with both governments. Just to summarise the approach, Chair, the agreed approach is that the updates can happen either through an update to the existing business case narrative or by way of a separate addendum. The guidance includes a process chart where the SRO and their project team engages with the PMO to update all 5 cases of the business case to ensure it's current and it aligns with the government's Better Business Case guidance. The process also dovetails with the existing change control process, which is currently in place for the portfolio. When the updating has been completed, the business cases will be signed off by the project SRO and reported to their specific project board, and then taken through the City Deal governance boards for information. We're already operating this process in effect. We're just completing the update to the Swansea waterfront business case in readiness for their gateway review next week. So we're seeking approval from Joint Committee Chair for the guidance note presented.
Thank you very much, Ian. Diolch yn fawr. Are there any queries from members, or are we happy to move to the vote? I think we're quite contented with it. It's there for information. As Ian outlined, it's been agreed in principle with both UK and Welsh Government. So I'll ask them formally that members show by raising their hands that they're happy to accept the recommendations as set out under item 12. Diolch. There we are. Everyone in agreement? Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much. Therefore, that is approved. And we can move on to item 13, which is again, Ian, to discuss the assurance framework. So Ian, over to you. Just to say, Ian, you're currently, your camera is switched off at the moment, so we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh. It's on my screen, Chair.
Oh, yeah. If that's the case, carry on.
Yeah, I think, Chair, some of us can see him, so I don't know. It's must be a fault of the Teams.
Okay, no problem. Ian, carry on.
You're not missing much, but I'll press on regardless anyway. The second item I'm covering is in relation to the assurance framework for the portfolio. It's included in the papers, Chair. The purpose is to provide a workable framework for the management, resourcing and governance of the external assurance arrangements for the portfolio across the 9 headline projects and programmes. Again, it's been developed in consultation with governments, SROs and project leads. In summary, what it does is provides clarity for the programme and project teams and the SROs and other stakeholders on the assurance arrangements that will apply to the portfolio. It also meets the requirements and expectations of both governments for the external assurance portfolio. In summary, assurance will happen at 3 levels. It'll happen at the portfolio level with our annual gateway review, and I'll cover that in the next agenda item. It'll happen at the headline programme and project level through regular gateway reviews at key decision points in project development and delivery, but it will also capture and consider the project and work streams that are within the headline projects and programmes, some of which can be significant in terms of scale, value and impact. The framework emphasises the importance of the IAP, which is the Integrated Assurance and Approval Plan, which each project will have in place. which identifies and schedules reviews going forward. It also emphasises the importance of a risk potential assessment, which every project will undertake and is submitted to Welsh Government to undertake a robust assessment and recommend on the appropriate level of assurance for a particular project. In practice, we've already been applying this approach for several months. It's workable, it's pragmatic, and the assurance framework presented will formalise this approach, give clarity and guidance to stakeholders. So again, Chair, requesting approval of the assurance framework submitted.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you very much. And as you say, the document has been developed in consultation with project leads and Welsh and UK government. Again, are there any questions from members, or are you happy to proceed to the vote? Yeah, we'll move to the vote then. Can I ask you by raising your hands then, please, if you can accept the recommendations as set out under item 13, please. Jeff and Bauer, thank you very much. So that's been approved, and we can move on to the next item, which is item 14, and the portfolio gateway review that Ian referenced in the last item. So Ian, over to you for the last one, Jack.
Yeah, finally for me, Chair, the annual portfolio gateway review was undertaken 20th to 22nd of July. It's a key element, as I've already mentioned, of the portfolio assurance process. It's an external independent review team, and they held conversations with 20 stakeholders across 2 days and then reported back to Wendy as the portfolio SRO on the third day. Pleased to report the overall outcome was an amber green delivery confidence assessment, or DCA rating. Very good outcome for a strategic portfolio. It doesn't mean that all projects and programs have the same rating, as different and individual assurance arrangements are in place for those projects and programs. The summary findings were that the portfolio continues to make good progress and is well regarded across many stakeholder groups. The establishment of the PMO and the dedication and support from Joint Committee is recognised as being key to progress. The leadership of the individual programs and projects has also been key to successful delivery to date. The findings do acknowledge as well that the operating environment has become much more difficult for the last 12 months, presenting risks that are largely outside the control of the portfolio, but that all reasonable measures are being undertaken to strengthen this position and be proactive in the event of the difficult operating environment. There's 4 recommendations in the Gateway Review that relate to business case development, the active monitoring of costs and benefits, the increased access to PMO intelligence and resource for individual projects, and enhancing the clarity of reports and communications through the use of plain language and exec summaries. The action plans included in the papers, Chair, to respond to those recommendations. All actions are in progress. One is completed to date, and the remainder will be completed by the next quarterly reporting round. So we're asking for approval for the action plan in relation to the Gateway Review. Thank you, Chair.
Jeff, thank you, Ian, for that. As I say, it's pleasing that we had that amber green assessment rating overall. That's really positive, and thank you to everyone for their work really across the piece here on the range of projects. I know it's much appreciated. There's a lot of work that goes on in the background. So Jeff and Val, thank you very much for that. As Ian mentioned, there are 2 parts. We need to note the information in terms of the report, but also we need to approve the action plan as is set out as part of the report. If there aren't any questions, I will move to the vote and ask members to show by raising your hands rather to show that you're happy to approve the action plan as set out. Great, thank you very much. So that's approved. And we will move on then to the last item on the agenda, which is item 15, which is the forward work plan. John, do you want to say a few words on this quickly? Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is the last report in the pack that you've got, so page 158. It's basically a table summary of all the things that are happening within the 6 to 12 month period, noting that was from October, so we covered off quite a few of those elements already today in joint committee. But this covers, just for the headlines, governance, comms engagement, anything around legal, finance, and any other activity associated with things that are either highlighted to joint committee or joint committee will be made aware of them. So the only one I probably would pick out, Chair, is that we are, and Ian Williams will oversee this, the development of our portfolio business case. We will start ramping up that activity around Christmas into the new year so that we can submit it to the government, and that is what gets us our release of drawdown of funds on an annual basis. So it's just a top up of where we are and what we're doing. So it shouldn't be a huge undertaking, but everybody's contributions to that would be greatly welcomed. But I'll leave the rest of the information with board members, and we will report on this every 6 months to get input from everyone as to what is coming up on the agenda. And Chair, we will also share this with Joint Scrutiny Committee so that they can see what's on the radar or what's being considered by Joint Committee as well.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jonathan, for that. As I said, the next meeting takes place in February, and there are quite a few items there that are penciled in, so possibly we could look at having a discussion outside of the meeting to see how best we get that information to members, so we can give them the focus that they deserve, really, because obviously we don't want agenda to be packed with items and not have the time to look at them in the proper depth. So, but with that, we'll ask members then to note by raising your hands the forward work programme. Are we happy to note that? Great. Thank you very much. And that brings us then to the end of today's meeting. So thank you very much for your presence. Thank you to officers for your contributions and for your answers, and thank you to members too for your presence. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.